There comes a moment when holding on does nothing but break you, and the only real power you have is to let go so completely that it's as if he never existed. Not with hesitation, not with softness, but with the kind of certainty that leaves no room for his ego to creep back in. Because men with fragile pride often believe they can walk in and out of your life, that no matter how they treat you, you'll still be there to soothe, to argue, to prove, to forgive. But when you erase him without mercy, you don't just walk away, you pull the ground out from under his ego. You show him that his games, his pride, his arrogance no longer hold a place in your story, and that's when karma begins its work. It doesn't need your effort, it doesn't need your revenge, it just needs your absence. Your silence, your detachment, your decision to thrive without him, those are the sparks that light karma's fire. This isn't about cruelty, it's about clarity. It's about reclaiming your peace, your energy, and your self-respect by refusing to let someone's ego have the final say in your life. Silence is one of the most brutal forms of power you can ever wield, and when you use it to erase someone from your life, it cuts deeper than any words ever could. The reason is simple: his ego doesn't just want you to care, it needs you to. It feeds on your reactions, your anger, your tears, even your attempts at closure. Every time you explain yourself, argue with him, or even cry over him, his ego feels validated because it knows it still holds space in your life. But when you go completely silent, when you withdraw without fanfare, without giving him the satisfaction of an explanation, his ego starves. It suddenly finds itself screaming into a void, with no applause, no audience, no reaction. And that silence becomes louder than anything you could ever say. When you disappear from his world, you force him into a reality he can't control. He may try to provoke you, bait you into responding, or do things to trigger your emotions, but the more you refuse to engage, the more powerless he becomes. Because an ego without attention has nothing to stand on. It thrives only when it knows it still matters to you. When you erase him, when your silence becomes absolute, you dismantle the very foundation of his pride. He expected a fight, he expected drama, he expected you to keep proving your love or your worth. What he never expected was nothing. This doesn't mean erasing him is easy. Your emotions will fight you, because silence can feel unbearable at first. You'll want to explain yourself, to show him what he's lost, to make him regret in the moment. But true strength lies in resisting that urge. By holding your silence, you stop playing the game entirely, and here's the truth: the game only ever served his ego, never your healing. Walking away without a word, erasing him from your energy, is not weakness. It's the ultimate statement of power. It's saying, you no longer deserve access to me, and I don't owe you anything. That kind of finality is what keeps him awake at night, because it denies him the closure he thought he controlled. The beauty of silent erasure is that it gives you back to yourself. The more you withdraw your words, the more you hear your own voice again. The less you react to him, the more energy you have to pour into your own life. Silence is not just about punishing his ego, it's about healing yours. It teaches you that your peace is worth more than proving a point, that you don't need him to understand your value for it to exist, that your happiness does not depend on his regret, and the moment you embrace that truth, you've already erased him from the story in the most merciless way possible by choosing yourself. Eventually, silence becomes unbearable for him, not because he misses you as a person, but because his ego can't stand the thought of being irrelevant. And that's when karma steps in. While you're building a life where his name no longer crosses your mind, he's left to deal with the emptiness of your absence. He will wonder why you didn't fight, why you didn't beg, why you didn't stay to argue, and the answer is simple: you erased him. You left no trace, no bridge, no open door, and in that void, his ego finally faces its greatest fear: not rejection, but irrelevance. Erasing him without mercy isn't about cruelty. It's about choosing peace over chaos, dignity over drama, and self-respect over ego games. Silence becomes your shield, your weapon, and your victory. And in the end, it's not you who breaks him, it's his own ego collapsing in the emptiness you left behind. His ego feeds on one thing above all else: your reaction. It doesn't matter whether that reaction is love, anger, sadness, or even jealousy. As long as you respond, he knows he still holds space in your heart and mind. That's why the most devastating move you can make is not to scream, not to argue, not to chase, but to simply give him nothing. No reaction is the one thing his pride can't handle, because it leaves him with no proof that he still matters. Without your fire, his ego is left cold, hungry, and irrelevant. When you refuse to react, you're not just ignoring him, you're taking back the power he thought he owned. Every unanswered message, every time you scroll past without looking, every time you resist the urge to respond to his bait, you're showing him that he no longer dictates your emotional state. This kind of control frustrates the ego because it thrives on knowing it can still pull you back in whenever it wants. The moment you stop reacting, you break that cycle. You show him that the strings he once pulled so easily are now cut, and no matter how hard he tugs, nothing moves. At first he might escalate. He might try harder, push buttons, or even attempt to manipulate you into breaking your silence. Because an ego that feels ignored becomes desperate. But that desperation is not your problem, it's his. And the longer you hold your ground, the more he's forced to sit with the truth that he no longer has the effect on you he once did. That truth is crushing for someone whose sense of power came from your emotions. For you, not reacting isn't just about starving his ego, it's about feeding your peace. Every time you hold back the urge to reply, you're reminding yourself that your energy is sacred. Every time you choose not to engage, you prove to yourself that his drama doesn't deserve your attention. And over time, this practice doesn't just weaken his hold, it strengthens you. You begin to realize that the less you give, the more you have left for yourself. You reclaim the focus that once went into defending yourself, explaining yourself, or proving your worth, and you redirect it toward building the life you deserve. No reaction is also one of the most confusing responses for someone with a fragile ego. Anger makes sense to him, it shows he mattered. Sadness makes sense to him, it shows he had impact. Even indifference, when faked, can still reveal cracks in your armor. But silence, true non-engagement, leaves him with nothing to interpret. It forces him into the mirror of his own choices, and for someone who runs from accountability, that silence is unbearable. He's left to wonder, did you stop caring? Did you find better? Did you erase him entirely? That uncertainty gnaws at his pride far more than any words you could have thrown his way. And the truth is, while his ego spirals in confusion, you're finding freedom. Because every time you don't react, you release yourself a little more. You stop letting him rent space in your mind. You stop letting his actions define your day. You start to realize that indifference isn't just about ignoring him, it's about genuinely no longer being affected by him. That's when you know you've truly broken the cycle, when you're no longer holding back a reaction because you're trying to prove something, but because you honestly have nothing left to say. That's the ultimate ego breaker, not anger, not revenge, not proving your worth, just no reaction, a void so complete that he has no way to measure his importance in your life anymore. And that silence, that emptiness, becomes the stage where karma eventually takes over. While you're busy building peace, he's left battling the echo of his own irrelevance. Erasing him without mercy is refusing to justify yourself. His ego thrives on explanations, on your attempts to prove why you walked away, why you stopped caring, or why you no longer respond. But the truth is, the more you explain, the more you feed his sense of importance. He wants to believe that your silence, your distance, or your decision to move on still revolves around him. He wants to know he mattered enough to require a long explanation. That's why your refusal to justify yourself is such a powerful move. It tells him he doesn't deserve the privilege of your words, and that your choice doesn't need his approval. When you stop explaining yourself, you take back control over your narrative. Too often, women get trapped in the cycle of over-explaining, thinking that if they just find the right words, he'll understand their pain or finally acknowledge their worth. But men with inflated egos rarely listen to understand. They listen to defend, to twist your words, or to use them against you. Every explanation becomes another opening for him to argue, dismiss, or invalidate your truth. By saying nothing, by walking away without a speech, you remove his chance to rewrite your story. You leave him with only your actions, and those actions speak louder than any justification ever could. Refusing to justify yourself is also a statement of self-worth. It shows that you know your value isn't up for debate. You don't need him to validate your feelings or agree with your reasons. You don't need him to nod in approval before you decide that you deserve better. It's the quiet confidence that says, "I don't need you to understand me. I understand myself." That kind of strength is deeply unsettling to someone whose ego relies on keeping you in doubt, constantly questioning whether you're right to walk away. When you show no doubt, when you stop pleading your case, he's left with the uncomfortable realization that you've closed the door on his opinion. Of course, he may try to pull you back into the trap. He might accuse you of being cold, selfish, or heartless. He may demand an explanation, pretending that he just wants closure, when in reality he wants reassurance that he still matters. But the moment you break and justify yourself, you give him exactly what he craves: your energy. That's why staying firm is so important. Your silence, your lack of explanation, becomes the wall he can't climb. And the harder he pushes, the clearer it becomes that the door is locked, not because you owe him nothing, but because you've chosen peace over proving a point. This silence forces him to sit with himself, and that is where karma begins to work. Because without your explanations to twist or your emotions to feed on, he's left facing the weight of his actions alone. He doesn't get to soothe his pride by convincing himself that you were overreacting. He doesn't get to comfort his ego by hearing that you still care enough to explain. He's left with emptiness, and in that emptiness, regret begins to grow. That's the sting of karma, not your words, not your anger, but the absence of both. Meanwhile, for you, the refusal to justify yourself is freedom. It's the end of draining conversations that go nowhere. It's the release of needing to be understood by someone who never wanted to understand in the first place. It's the ability to walk away with your dignity intact, knowing you didn't waste one more drop of energy trying to convince someone of your worth. Because the right person won't need endless explanations, they'll see your value without them. The power is in the quiet exit. No justification, no speech, no list of reasons, just your presence gone, your energy reclaimed, and your peace restored. That silence becomes the loudest message of all, and his ego, starving for words it will never get, will eventually be left with the one thing it can't escape: regret. Erasing him without mercy is to rebuild your life so fully that his absence looks like it was never a disruption, but a blessing in disguise. The most powerful way to crush his ego isn't in anything you say to him, but in how you live after him. When a man with pride assumes that your world revolved around him, he expects your life to fall apart once he's gone. He thinks you'll spend nights scrolling through old messages, crying over what could have been, waiting for him to return. That fantasy feeds his ego. It makes him feel bigger, stronger, more important. But when you rebuild, when you step into new routines, new joys, and new experiences without ever looking back, You shatter that illusion. You show that he was not the center of your story, he was just a passing character. Rebuilding your life isn't just about external success, though that's part of it. Yes, it's powerful when he sees you thriving in your career, glowing in your health, or surrounded by friends who uplift you. But the deeper rebuild happens on the inside when you take the pieces of yourself that may have been broken in the relationship and put them back together with more strength and clarity than before. That inner rebuild is what makes you unstoppable, because it ensures that even if he were to return, there would be nothing for him to claim. You've built something so much bigger than his presence that his absence barely registers. The mistake many people make after heartbreak is trying to prove they've moved on by forcing it, posting curated pictures to spark jealousy, chasing rebound relationships, or acting indifferent while secretly still hurting. That only traps you in his orbit, because your actions still revolve around how he might react. True rebuilding isn't about him at all. It's about you. It's about filling your days with things that genuinely bring you joy, setting new goals that inspire you, and surrounding yourself with people who reflect your worth back to you. It's about building a life that feels so authentic and fulfilling that the thought of him fades naturally, not because you pushed it away, but because it no longer fits in the world you've created. Here's the thing about rebuilding. It's the part he never expects. His ego convinces him that you'll always carry a torch, that you'll secretly hope for his return. When he realizes you've not only survived but thrived without him, that's when regret sets in. He has to face the truth that losing you wasn't just losing a partner, it was losing someone who refused to let his absence define her. And that realization is brutal for someone whose pride depends on feeling irreplaceable. For you, rebuilding is freedom. It's waking up one morning and realizing your thoughts aren't consumed by him anymore. It's laughing genuinely with friends, not because you're pretending, but because you're really happy. It's making decisions based on your desires, not what he would think. It's stepping into a version of yourself that might never have existed had you not let go. That's the beautiful irony. Sometimes the very thing that broke you becomes the catalyst for your greatest growth. And when he eventually sees it, whether directly or through the whispers of mutual connections, his ego will sting. Not because you set out to hurt him, but because you showed him that his presence wasn't as vital as he believed. That's the karma. His regret comes not from what you did to him, but from what you did for yourself after him. Because nothing bruises an ego more than realizing it wasn't as essential as it thought it was. So, rebuild without hesitation. Pour yourself into your passions, nurture your relationships, grow into your power. Let your life become so rich and full that his memory feels like a distant shadow. That is how you erase him without mercy, not through anger, not through revenge, but through the undeniable truth that you don't need him. And in that truth, his ego will find the regret it can't escape. Erasing him without mercy is cutting off every thread of attention he could use to keep his ego alive. Attention is oxygen to someone who thrives on pride. Whether it's your messages, your likes on his posts, the way you still check his stories, or even the occasional argument, every ounce of attention reassures him that he still matters to you. And as long as he believes he matters, his ego stays intact. That's why silence is such a powerful tool. It starves him of the one thing his pride cannot live without. When you no longer react, no longer acknowledge, no longer play his game, you take away the fuel that keeps his ego burning. It's not always easy to cut off that attention, because part of you may still crave it too. There's comfort in the familiar, in the cycle of reaching out, even if it only ends in pain. You might feel the urge to check up on him just to see if he's hurting as much as you are, or to post something knowing he'll see it. But the truth is, Every time you give in to that urge, you give him power. You give his ego another chance to believe he still has control. And the cruel reality is that some men don't come back out of love. They come back out of pride, just to test if they still can. Cutting off attention shuts that door permanently. It sends the unspoken message, you no longer exist in my world. This silence can be maddening to someone who's used to being fed by your energy. At first, he may try harder to get your reaction, texting you, watching your stories, leaving subtle hints designed to draw you back in. That's when you must hold firm. The temptation to break your silence just once can be overwhelming, but remember, every word, every glance, every response is a victory for his ego. The longer you withhold it, the clearer it becomes that his tricks no longer work. And that realization is what begins to crack the foundation of his pride. For you, cutting off attention is not about punishment, but about liberation. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of always checking what he's doing, decoding his mixed signals, or wondering how he feels. It allows you to redirect all that energy back into your own life, where it can actually make a difference. Instead of wasting hours replaying conversations or stalking his profile, you can use that time to grow, to connect with people who value you, to invest in yourself. Silence is not just a weapon against his ego, it's a gift to your healing. The beauty of this step is that it requires nothing dramatic. You don't need to send a long message declaring your boundaries, because even that gives him attention. All you need to do is vanish from his world. No response, no engagement, no acknowledgement. The quietness itself becomes louder than any words you could say. And in that silence, he will begin to wonder. He will question if he ever truly had the hold on you he believed he did. He will feel the weight of regret, not because you attacked his ego, but because you starved it. Over time, this silence shifts the power completely. You're no longer reacting to him, he's reacting to your absence. He's left chasing a ghost, replaying his own mistakes, and facing the karma of realizing that he underestimated you. The regret he feels will be his alone to carry, because you won't be there to soften it with attention. And that's the point. You're not here to fix his wounds or cushion his ego anymore. You're here to reclaim yourself. Cutting off attention is both the simplest and hardest act of strength. Simple because it requires no action at all. Hard because it demands discipline to resist the urge to look back. But once you master it, you'll see the transformation, not just in how he perceives you, but in how you perceive yourself. You'll feel lighter, freer, more powerful, and that freedom is the ultimate erasure, the kind that no ego can survive. Erasing him without mercy is to embody the kind of happiness and peace that makes his ego irrelevant. Nothing stings more to someone who once thrived on your pain than seeing you truly unbothered, genuinely thriving, and radiating a kind of joy that doesn't include them. Men with fragile pride often expect you to linger in bitterness, to waste months or years proving how much they hurt you. They want your sadness to be their trophy. They want your resentment to be evidence that they mattered. But when you let go so deeply that your happiness becomes untouched by their memory, you take away the last thing they could hold on to, the illusion of significance. This isn't about fake smiles or pretending to move on. It's about building a life so authentically fulfilling that his presence no longer has any weight in it. Happiness isn't just the absence of sadness, it's the deliberate act of creating joy, love, and meaning in your own world. When you pour into friendships that make you feel alive, passions that light up your soul, and goals that remind you of your strength, you naturally push him into the background. And the less you think about him, the more powerless he becomes in your story, because the cruel truth for his ego is this: the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Indifference is where he no longer exists, not because you're fighting him, but because you don't need to. Choosing peace over chaos is also a message to yourself. It says, I deserve better than constant emotional warfare. It's the realization that your energy is sacred, and wasting it on someone who couldn't appreciate it is the real loss, not yours, but his. Your joy becomes a form of self-respect, and that self-respect is the very thing his ego can never compete with. While he waits for you to break, to reach out, or to show you still care, what he finds instead is silence paired with the glow of someone who has moved forward. That's when regret sneaks in, because he can no longer deny that he underestimated you. What's powerful about this step is that your happiness doesn't have to scream or announce itself. It's not about posting perfectly curated moments online to make him jealous. In fact, when your joy is real, you don't care whether he sees it or not. You're not performing for him, you're living for you, and that authenticity is what makes it unshakable. It's the quiet confidence of walking into a room and not wondering if he's watching. It's the ease of waking up in the morning without the heaviness of old wounds. It's the laughter that feels effortless again, not forced. That's the kind of peace no ego can withstand, because it shows you didn't just survive him, you flourished without him. The irony is that karma always comes disguised as your glow up. It doesn't hit him in the form of punishment you deliver, but in the life you create after him. Every smile that isn't about him, every milestone he doesn't get to witness, every joy he no longer has access to becomes a reminder of what his pride cost him. He may never admit it to you, but he will feel it, because nothing humbles a man's ego more than realizing he lost someone who didn't just move on, but became better after leaving him behind. For you, this step is the ultimate closure. It's the point where you no longer need revenge, because your peace is enough. You don't need to wonder if he regrets losing you, because the answer doesn't change your joy. You don't need to wait for karma to work, because you are already living proof of it. And the best part is, the happiness you build now isn't about him. It's about you finally giving yourself what you always deserved. That is how you erase him without mercy, not through anger, not through bitterness, but through the undeniable truth that his ego no longer has a place in your joy. When you erase him without mercy, you're not being cruel, you're being free, you're finally drawing the line that says, your ego doesn't get to feed off my pain anymore. The beauty of this isn't in revenge, it's in release. You stop fighting battles that never gave you peace, and instead, you reclaim your time, your heart, your energy. His ego may spin, his pride may sting, and karma will do its quiet work, but none of that is your concern anymore. Your only concern is building a life that feels so full, so rich, so true to you that his existence fades like background noise. Because the most powerful statement you can ever make is not proving him wrong, but showing through your joy, your peace, and your silence, that he never had the power he thought he did. That's not just erasing him, that's rewriting your story. And in the end, his ego won't be what defines you. Your strength will.